This is a video on how to change the spark plugs on a 2011 Ninja 250. The plugs need to be changed every 7,500 miles. My bike is at that point. The service manual says to use CR8E plugs, and you should also probably get some anti-seize. In order to do this job, you're going to have to remove the left and right fairings, and it's going to be extremely difficult to replace the plugs without first removing the gas tank. But we can't remove the gas tank unless we first remove the seat. So that said, let's get started. It's kind of hard to get in here, but I'm going to move this out of the way so you can kind of see what's in there, and we're going to use 2 fingers, and you're going to hear some popping noises. Hear that? These ridges are the popping noises. So you might hear 3 of those. If you pull it out quickly, you might hear just 1. And just work it up through these 2 wires, and there we go. I think I got some grease on it when I was practicing with that, but you see it says NGK. So that's an indication that it's probably best to use NGK spark plugs, which is what we're going to do. It's very important to be aware that these wires, they can come out. So if you are playing with this thing and it actually comes out, that's okay. Just plug it back in, make sure it goes all the way in, and you're good to go. Okay, so that's the first spark plug, and the second one is going to be more difficult to remove. Notice that all this stuff over here doesn't allow us to get into the engine. So one of the most important tips when doing this job is to go ahead and take this connector off. It's just kind of goes around that little metal tab on the frame. You can take that off like so. Alright, so then you just push this down, and you might have to use a just ever so slightly. Obviously you want to be careful. So now this is going to make it 1,000 times more easy to get to the spark plug cap here. And you might have to go through the top, you might have to go through the bottom. Just feel what works better. See, this is really awkward. I can't get 2 hands in there. But if I put another hand from the top, then we're in business. So I'm hearing a pop. Obviously you want to pull it straight up. And there we go. So it's not easy, but you can do it if you remove that connector. Alright, so that's just resting there. And so now we're stuck. We can't do anything unless you get your spark plug tool that comes with the owner's kit. So I'm going to get my key. And get the spark plug tools out. This is probably the best tool to use because it's specifically designed for this bike. See how this rotates? This makes it to where you can actually change the spark plugs without removing the gas tank. The problem is it's really hard to use a torque wrench without removing the gas tank. It might be possible. Also, be aware that if you don't have the owner's tool, most socket sets come with a spark plug socket. The 5/8 socket is the same as a 16mm socket. And because I'm using a 1/4 drive torque wrench, I need this 1/4 to 3/8 adapter. And to get into the spark plug chamber, we're going to need this hinge. And to get the right depth, we're going to need an extension. I've never actually used this setup, but if you don't have the owner's tool, you can try this. But again, just be aware that the owner's tool is probably the best tool to use for this job because it's specifically made for this bike. And I'm going to demonstrate with a new spark plug. how this tool works. So the problem is the spark plug chamber is really deep. So this tool has rubber in there that catches the spark plug. So you're actually going to remove the spark plug, and it's actually going to catch the spark plug. So you're going to bring it out, and if it didn't catch the spark plug, you wouldn't be able to really get it out because the spark plug chamber is just too deep. So that's one of the many purposes of this tool. Now before you remove the spark plugs, you want to use a flashlight to make sure there's nothing on top of the spark plugs or around the spark plugs that will go into the cylinder chamber when you remove the spark plugs. You can use a vacuum cleaner adapter to get down there, suck everything out. There's a lot of different ways to do it, but just be aware if there's anything on top of that spark plug, you don't want it going into the cylinder chamber. So that said, let's go ahead and remove the spark plug. It's going to be a 14 millimeter on the top here, and you're going to need an extension. Well, that's just what I'm going to use. And so again, notice that this tool has a bend there, so we can get it in. We can get it in really easily. You see, it literally just falls in there. Now you want to make sure, obviously, that it's on properly. And make sure that it falls around the metal edges, and then you're going to feel it kind of settle into place. I'm going to go ahead and remove the spark plugs. Just going to go ahead and loosen them. And then you can just, now the threads there's a lot of thread, so it's going to take a while before it comes out. And again, if you didn't have this spark plug tool, it'd be really difficult. Again, there's a lot of thread, so keep going. Alright, there's a spark plug. Now again, if I had to reach down in there, that would be extremely difficult because the spark plug chamber is really deep, but you see this tool, it just brings the spark plug right out. And I can move this around, it's not going to come out. You wouldn't want to do that with a new spark plug though, because you don't want to, there's a possibility it might fly out. So that's the old spark plug. If you're a really experienced mechanic, you can tell just by looking at that how the bike is running, but you just want to make sure that both spark plugs look similar when it comes to the way they're burning. So there you go. So it's time to find the new spark plug. Now you can pull both spark plugs out at the same time, but you want the chambers to be open for the minimal amount of time. So I'm going to go ahead and put the new spark plug in, and you want to use one of these tools to check the spark plug gap. Now the service manual says 0.7 millimeters to 0.8 millimeters. It's kind of hard to find that in the service manual. So if we put this through here, we can see it goes in easily. So we go to the next bigger one, and it doesn't really go in, it barely goes in. And then the next bigger one, it's not going to go in at all. So it's somewhere between, if you flip it over, we have millimeters, so somewhere between 0.889 and 0.762. So that's basically where it should be. So the gap is pretty good. Here's another tool that I have. If the gap is wrong, you can use this part here, this specifically designed to change the gap, and it's pretty easy to figure out how to use that. Alright, so let's go ahead and put the new spark plug in. So you're going to take your tool and you're going to insert the spark plug in the tool, and you're going to feel it go into that rubber and bottom out. And so now we're ready to go ahead and put it in. And by the way, you could use some anti-seize, but I've already used that a couple times and I haven't really had any problem with threads getting locked up on this. so I'm not too worried about it, but go ahead and use some anti-seize if you're worried about that. So we're just going to very lightly thread, and I'm not using any pressure at all because you want to be very careful not to strip the threads on the spark plugs chambers, obviously. So we're going down, down. And again, there's a lot of thread. So it seems like we're going forever, but you can see that this tool is going down. Ever so slowly it's going down. I'm going to go ahead and get my extension. Again, there's a lot of thread, so expect it to take a while. I think that's about it. It's ready to be torqued. The service manual says to go to 115 inch-pounds. Now this is a Harbor Freight torque wrench. A lot of people don't use Harbor Freight, but this torque wrench has worked really well. And again, we're doing 115 inch-pounds. I want to make sure it's straight up and down in the chamber. And it's probably best to start at a lower torque setting, so I'm going to go down to 65 just to make sure that that's working properly. So torque wrench clicked at 65. So now I'm going to go to, just go right to 115. And here we go. So that's 115. Just double checking. And there you go. Alright, so I'm going to take the tool out, and we're done with that spark plug. Alright, so again, we're going to use the flashlight to check the spark plug chamber, make sure there's no debris in there. It's always possible for a pebble to fall, you know, in there. You don't want that going into the chamber, so it looks good. So now we're going to, we have this connector removed, so it's really easy to get in here now. We'll get the tool positioned properly around the metal edges, and then once it goes in, you'll feel it go into that rubber. Once it's around the metal edges properly, you can push down. And so now again, we're using 14 millimeter. So now we broke it loose. And again, there's a lot of thread here, so be patient. The spark plug is going to come up, but it's going to take a lot of turning. You can see the back part of the tool coming up. And we'll see if the spark plug is loose. Looks like it is, so there you can see the spark plug is coming up. Again, that spark plug would not be easy to remove if it weren't for this tool. So there you can see it's in there. We're going to check the spark plug gap for the second spark plug. We want 0.7 to 0.8 millimeters. And I'm going to flip our tool over for millimeters. And we can easily fit the 0.64 millimeter But if you try to fit the 0.76 millimeter, as you can see, it's not going in. That doesn't happen very often, but it's happening with this spark plug. So we're going to use this tool here, and we're going to fit that in there, and we're just going to pry up, and that should move the gap just enough to where we can get the right gauge in there. So now the 0.76 fits in, and the 0.86 does not fit in. So there you go. And remember, you can put a little anti-seize on there if you feel that your bike maybe needs it. Sometimes I put anti-seize on, sometimes I don't. But let's go ahead and get our tool, take the old spark plug out, insert, and again you want to get it around those metal edges, and then you're going to feel it go into the rubber. And so now again it'll hold. So now we're going into the spark plug chamber. And if you want to be really careful, you can just thread it in by hand. That's probably the best way to do it. That way you can be absolutely sure it's going in straight. Again, there's a lot of thread, so don't be impatient. You can slowly start to see the bolt going down. Again, it seems like it's not going in, but trust me, it is. There's a lot of thread on this thing. If you look at the spark plug, there's a lot of thread on it. So there we go. So now we're ready to start torquing it up. Looks like it's got even more thread to go in. Alright, so now we're ready for our torque wrench. Now again, it's really important to not strip these threads, so it's probably best to start at a really low torque setting just to make sure your torque wrench is working. So I'm going to start at 65. Alright, so we're going to 65 on the old Harbor Freight torque wrench. 65 inch-pounds, and there you go. Alright, so now I'm going to 80. You might think that this is a little bit much, but trust me, you don't want to strip these threads. So we'll just go bit by bit. That's 80. We're just making sure the torque wrench is working. And now we'll go to 115, which is the final torque. Make sure the torque wrench is straight up. The extension is going straight into the hole. And there you see we have 115 inch-pounds. Just double checking. And there you go. So 115 inch-pounds. And we take our tool out. And there we go. So now we're ready to put the spark plug caps on. So because we have this connector taken apart here, it's going to make it a lot easier to put the spark plug cap back on. So it allows us to get our hands in on the other side of the bike. If that connector were there, then we'd have no hope of getting in here from the other side of the bike. So you're going to hear popping noises as the ridges go down. I'm going to go ahead and get to the other side of the bike. Alright, so we're going down, and you can push down with the other finger to make sure it's going down. And again, you're going to hear popping noises as it goes down. So that should be about where it is. It's kind of hard to see if it's all the way down. Just keep pushing until it doesn't go any farther. And that should be it. So now we're going to get the other spark plug cap. And you want to go out to the front of the engine first and then move up. And then down into the chamber. And you're going to hear those popping noises. You're going to feel the click. You should hear 3 or 4 clicks, and there you go. Alright, so we're going to put this connector back into place. Make sure it clicks, or the plastic part here just rests on this metal tab. Make sure that goes all the way down, and that's how you change the spark plugs on a 2011 Ninja 250. Now all you have to do is put the gas tank back on, and the seat, and the side fairings, and the side covers, and you're ready to go. So now we're going to test ride the bike. That's how you change spark plugs on a Ninja 250.